Dr. Isaac Kalua Green. We insist on the green, and you're going to tell us a little bit about that, because folks think we just call you Green because, but you actually had green put into your name.
Yes.
But before we go,
did.
Good morning.
And thank you for having me here. Good morning, Du and team. You guys are the unsung heroes in this country. You keep doing things that really mesmerize many and transform lives. So keep up. And thank you for having me here.
Thank you
Proud
for coming.
of you. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Very encouraging to hear that. It's been a while since we had a conversation with you. But you know what? Things happen every now and then in the country. Then we need to then dig deep and bring folks who've been along the line for us to have that conversation, for us to understand what we're doing, where we've come from, and where we are going. So that we'll talk about in just a bit. But Dennis will welcome you with today's proverb.
Yes, today we are in Mauritania, a country that is rich in extractive industry. So one would talk about iron ore, gold, copper. They're also big on fish and livestock. But that notwithstanding, the high unemployment rate in the country still continues to be high. The country is being rated as being one of the poorest countries in the continent. And one would have hoped that with all the resources that they have, perhaps the country would be much better. But it's a story of many African countries. But the proverb we get from Mauritania: the desert has no road. Every traveler makes his own path. How would you interpret that?
A common problem. And what an opportunity that you have to make a path in life. But for you to make a path, you must know where you're going. Unless you know where you're headed to, any path, any desert will remain an open, large road. Create a path, understand where you're coming from, where you're headed to where you're headed to, why you exist, and the desert will become such a minimal space, and the road will be so clear.
Where? I know. Yo. Well said, well put.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Quite so. Well, let's jump into it, Doc.
And thank you, Ndu. Last time I was here, man, your show went viral everywhere. I keep finding people talking to me as if they listened to it yesterday.
There you go. Well, look,
Keep up. I just can't believe it.
we ponying up the questions, but then the folks come in here and then they give the responses. So that's all about you. And here we are in able to do that again. So thanks for lending a voice to this conversation. It's a pertinent one. So let's look a few years back when a logging ban was imposed. And that meant, essentially, that trees would not be cut down for a particular period of time in order to protect the environment, but also to ensure that there was enough tree cover. And there were certain gains that were to be made from that. And we can look into some of those. So maybe you can explain to us the rationale behind that ban. But then most recently, we've seen that that ban has been lifted and that logging is once again allowed in different parts of the country. I don't know if there's caveats to that, but it's going to be clearly allowed again. Is this scary?
I thank you for this question, very profound. And particularly now, I pick it on what we have just talked about, that we are in a desert and it is for us to create a road. So therefore, let me create the road here. There is nothing wrong in logging. There is nothing wrong in doing business of furniture. There is nothing wrong in creating employment opportunities. Nothing absolutely wrong. The how is what matters. And for you to understand the how, you need to know where we are at. 80% of Kenyans, that is 1 in every 8 people, or 80% generally, that let me put it that way, live around water resources, live around ecosystems where there is water, where Kenyans can be able to have plantations for food, and they can be able to have their livelihoods around that. That's all. 80% of our Kenyans live there.
Okay.
That means water is very important. That means livelihoods are very important to sustain. That means that we must do much, much more. At the same time, we need to balance, because this is jobs and our rivers. That is what we need to balance. Now, let's go back to other facts. The forest cover in our country has been said between 8.8, 7.6. Let me put it at 7.9, based on the average of what has been announced at different spaces and times. And therefore, you get to find that we need a lot more of forest cover. If 80% of our people, Kenyans, are living around those ecosystems, then we go back to the other side of balancing things, which means we need to understand how much timber do we need to be able to feed as sustainable livelihoods in terms of this. And I'll try to make this interesting, because when we talk about trees, it's very easy for people not to get it right, because I just want to create a link between our livelihoods and what we are talking about. Is not just trees, it's about the livelihoods. It's about a security issue for our country. So, Kenya can produce, or has the capacity, or is expected to produce at least 51% or cubic meters of timber or wood for it, million cubic meters to produce. We are currently producing, that is the estimated, what can be
potential.
The potential.
51 million cubic meters. Okay.
That is what is needed to have a sustainable field in that space.
Okay.
And then we are producing about 31 million currently. Okay. So there is a shortfall between the 31 million and the 50-something million, which is the 10 million cubic meters. That is a shortfall. Now, where do we get the shortfall for us to call this business sustainable?
Okay.
And where are the trees to be logged? Currently, the trees to be logged are inside forests. So when we talk about forest cover, we are also counting those trees that are out there. What does that mean? Trees have been planted in plantations like Shimba Hills, which is a double gazetted forest, means it is under Kenya Forest Service as a forest, and at the same time it is under the Kenya Wildlife Service for keeping animals and our wildlife.
Okay.
Of course, it's very well protected, because now it's a national wildlife space.
Okay.
The trees that were planted there as plantations have since grown to become a habitat for our animals, and therefore you cannot remove them. The same thing replicates itself around Mount Kenya region, where Mount Kenya is also gazetted as Kenya Wildlife Service space, and it is also a forest. There are trees that have been grown in that area that are supposed to be harvested when the time comes to harvest this. Okay? Now, what does this mean to the common man to understand what the logging means? The regeneration is what has been happening over the years for the trees.
Regeneration.
Okay? And if what has that regeneration done, away from the example that I've given towards the trees becoming a natural habitat for animals? It has since become a soil retainer. It has since become and created a lot of protection and creating microclimates around those areas, so that the more the rain, the more the food, the more the livelihoods and every other activities. If logging is done unsustainably, we are going to lose a lot of soil. A lot of erosion is going to happen, and therefore rainfalls are going to change, and therefore so many other activities are going to happen that are negative to the environment. Why is it therefore important for us to think about this, and how can we think about it in the best way possible? One, there is an opportunity. The entire area that is called Kenya Forest Service is lying within about 2.9 million hectares. Those are the 380 some, less than 400 forests that are under Kenya Forest Service. About 400.
Okay.
And there are more that are not yet gazetted. You remember when I used to be the Kenya Forest, when I used to be Kenya Water Towers Agency chair, we also brought out more additional forests that are supposed to be gazetted, more than 100 and something. Okay, so Kenya Forest Service is in charge of 2.9 hectares, which are the 386 forests, as if you may. Kenya Wildlife Service, on the other side, of course, is in charge of about 29 wildlife spaces that they have, and then we have another 33 that are managed under the county governments. Now, we have an opportunity here, and I like looking at life with opportunities that are going to create opportunities for the Kenyans and their livelihoods. One, we only have 2.9 million hectares. The potential, the required deficit of 10.3 cubic meters of wood that we need requires us to do close to 1 million hectares. So we have an additional 1 million hectares to do. But at the same time, we need to ensure that the 80% of Kenyans that live under those areas that they live in have sufficient water for them to exist, for them to have food, for them to support their livelihoods in the best way possible. So this is a subject that we need to deal with soberly. Is a subject that we need to deal with, knowing that it is not about trees, it's not about furniture, it's not about all these other things that we mentioned. It is a national security subject. When we say that we are going to have authority, we have had an opportunity for all this, and I would want you to listen to this very carefully, because it's a very sensitive matter. It's very easy to be misconstrued, to be political. It could also be a misguidance by the advisors of the president for them to do this recommendation. When you say that you're going to do that, when are you going to do that? How are you going to do that? I've mentioned it up to times that you need a scientific process, they know.
To lift the logging
scientific process.
To lift it or to implement it in the first place?
Whichever way.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Because what gains have we had?
Okay.
We are still at 8 point something or 7 point something forest cover. When you say go ahead, what is it that has informed that process? There must be an environmental impact assessment. That is non-negotiable. You cannot, in anyone in their right minds, give authority or guide the president to do a logging lift of what had been done without an environmental impact assessment, because that is going to establish what and balance issues in a manner that livelihoods are around these areas, and we need to create job opportunities. The quotation that the Kenya Forest Service will keep referring to, and I appreciate, because it's a matter of justification of why you are doing this. And what they would say is that we have a logging management and we have regulations. The question is, when were these regulations?
Regulations, yeah.
What we know in the public domain so far
Yes.
is what the president said.
Yes.
And you've said this has to go through a scientific process
Yes.
for banning
Yes.
and for lifting a ban.
Yes.
So we so far don't have a scientific explanation to why then we're lifting the ban. All we know is that the president lifted the ban to allow the harvesting, and this is what he said, and I quote him, mature trees in forests across the country. The move, according to him and the statement that he made, is one, to promote local industries, meaning that you're creating then jobs. Then the second thing is reducing our dependence on imported furniture. and the timber products. And so when he spoke about reopening of timber factories, and when he was speaking, this was in Elbagon, what he was essentially saying is, we will then need, and he actually gave a direction that to the Trade Cabinet Secretary, Lee Kinyanjui, and said, look, we are going to end the importation of furniture from China from here henceforth. We're going to create our own beds, our own sofa sets and whatnot. So the emphasis then on the lifting of this ban from that statement sounds it's conditional, sounds it's only restricted to only mature trees. And for lay people, you'll stop to wonder, if you look at a tree, how you'll know then this tree is mature is there's a way you can look at the trunk, look at the roots, look at the branches and say, oh, this tree is very, very old. And you'll be told this tree is 100 years old. So what is a mature tree? Is it a 10-year-old tree, a 50-year-old tree? Then who will oversee that only mature trees are being cut down? Because we are in a cycle where the president said that, look, we're going to spend and plant how many trees?
15 billion.
Exactly. So then I look at these two things, and it's a contradiction. And so my question is, from what, in very many words, I've said, does this qualify to be a statement that has been that has gone through a scientific process? Because you earlier said there is nothing wrong with logging, so we rule that out. So then, if we restrict ourselves to what we now know in the public domain, how do we even interpret this?
Very good question and very well put. So first of all, let me repeat. I am not contradicting the statement of the president in no manner, because logging is fine to log. You cannot open a shop without having stock to sell. You can never start a business without knowing who your supplier is. The ban that was put in for logging, which I was part of, was a very scientific process. We went to different parts of the country. We put a report that really made sure, and it was clear, it was glaring, that there was no option but to do the banning. And I am so happy that it is the same president, when he was the deputy, that was leading this process. So I am not contradicting this. What I am talking about by scientific is that now that we had a scientific process to do that, his ban or lifting of the ban now needs to be backed by a scientific process. The scientific process needs to consider 80% of people are living around the water towers and their livelihoods are dependent on that. The trees that we are talking about are inside the forests, that we are talking about increasing the forest covers, and therefore we are talking about our rivers, which most Kenyans depend upon. We have facts that are scientific, that Kenya requires at least 51 million cubic meters of wood for it to be able to deal with all demands, including furniture, including everything that is needed. Kenya is currently producing 31 million cubic. Okay? So there is a total deficit clearly that is of 10 cubic. Where is that cubic meter? That is the opening of a shop without knowing where the stock is coming from. Because if you're getting it from the same forests, though, you're having a problem. And that is what I'm talking about. We need to create that. There is much, much more money. Much, much more money. Practical. That is around regeneration. Depending on the mean annual increment that we must be able to have as a country, that adds, and that regeneration is coming through the employment opportunities. We are talking about forest management. We are talking about paying for ecosystem services. We are talking about enterprises around all this. As the trees regenerate, there is a lot of timber that can be used to create charcoal, because we must be able to check why is it that there is a lot of logging even when there is no ban.
When the ban.
Because It's just official. Logging has been happening. Trucks are carrying timber. People are, even the management of the forest itself. It's only that Kenya Forest cannot come out to say the truth. They don't have enough people to manage the forests.
So logging is still happening.
Logging has been happening
daily.
Okay? And therefore, the scientific process we are talking about helps KFS themselves. So that we can have people, for example, if you just take the Tana River and all that, if Nairobi, which uses the water that comes from there, pays the people up in the central region, there will be so much money there. There will be so much water here. There will be better environment. There will be food that people can be able to plant more than what is expected as business in these people. The people of Elbagon are suffering. Their livelihoods is around forests. Okay? And they have machinery and equipment that must be able to work. But where are we getting their trees from? That is the question.
So does the scientific process support the cutting down of mature trees? Because I want to understand.
Yes, of course.
It does.
Yes, of
So
course.
if the target is mature trees, it's fine.
Are they being produced at the farmlands of individual farmers so that they make money? In the way that you plant maize, these guys are just planting their trees. And they are getting sufficient money.
Or is it forests?
Or is it forests? The current trees, and why, in fact, the environmental impact assessment is so important, it's because this could be the last time, and we must make it the last time, that when we are logging in the places that we planted trees for harvesting, we have to remove those ones forever and only plant indigenous trees in those places. So the actual value of what is being logged is what we must be able to understand. And where is this money going to? The fact that these trees exist there, how much money can we get out of carbon credits vis-a-vis the logging so that it is getting better for the common person on existing in that place? When you listen to KFS speak, and I appreciate them, they are doing a good job. They quote regulations that are archaic, unfortunately. Outdated, because they were done before the existence of the 2010 Constitution. They are subordinate to the Constitution. Public participation must be there. People must be able to understand why you are doing this. We must never forget what happened in some of our forests before, where forests were cleared within 1 month, within 2 years, and some of them are regenerating today.
Doc, we talk about trees in the country, and you've mentioned something in terms of financing that is key, and that is on carbon credits. And that would be one way of looking at how regeneration would be a part of getting financing other than logging trees to get money. That is a conversation in its own way. But then again, there are also fears that now that it has been opened, that we can get into, we can start logging, there is fear that if this is not regulated, indigenous trees as well might be cut down, because anyone who's in business will get in and seize a tree and bring it down. So in terms of having that scientific module that would guide how this is being done, and also ensuring that those who planted trees for business purposes as well are brought into this conversation, how do we go about it? Because one would expect that the president who's been pushing for 15 billion trees to be planted and grown is the same person who's pushing for these trees to be cut down. How do we balance the equation and ensure indigenous trees are not cut down, that there is a scientific process, that we explore other means of finance, including carbon credits and many other options?
I like your question. Thank you so much. And we must start looking at the business opportunities and livelihoods. I talked about balancing jobs and our rivers. Kenya continues to have fewer rivers. There is a time I was so serious in my studies and I was trying to understand how many rivers we have. They were getting close to 4,000 rivers, but they all get into only 50 main rivers on all this. rivers are as important as the jobs that we are creating, because they create even more jobs than what we can be able to do. Now, we need to start thinking, where is it? Because even the stories that you hear about eucalyptus trees being very bad, it's a story. And we all know that it's a story.
It's bad for the water table.
We need a lot of them. They need to be planted in the best places. But the discussion is more fueled by the demand of timber, which continues to diminish, as opposed to the issue of where they have been planted. So the notion, and it's an issue of communication that we need to really put through in the best way possible. So the imagination is that the eucalyptus tree is very bad and should never exist. In fact, people now hate it with a passion. But I want to take you to Kiambu Road. You know Kiambu Road, where the car businesses starts.
Yes.
That.
Yeah.
You know that place.
Right.
The end of that forest, the Karura forest, you will see eucalyptus trees. They were mainly planted by Wangari Maathai herself during her time.
Yes.
And then she also moved on to talk about indigenous trees in that. Those trees still stand, some of them. Many have also been removed. The fights that you hear about forests and all this have been happening. This is the golden opportunity for us to start looking at the various people that are working in plantations. The farmers need to be able to see, you've been growing maize. How much money are you making out of maize? Can you do a plantation of eucalyptus? Can you do a plantation of pine? Can you do a plantation of this, so that you can have more money and you can be able to see this? This is the time that we talk about communities coming together, pulling together, so that we can be able to attack the carbon credits. Carbon credits today, Kenyans don't even have a clue, most of them, about them. Because it is foreigners, it is cartels that are coming through to earn what you should be earning, and therefore people don't understand the need of trees. So balancing all this is a very easy affair. Creating enterprises. The charcoal business is a multi-billion US dollar business in Kenya and internationally. Where can we get the option of charcoal? It is in thinning the trees, creating opportunities, enterprises that you can create charcoal briquettes. You have balanced. People want to pay school fees. You go ahead and do things that are going to be able to bring them to do that, using the forest and discussing this. Then moving out of this tree growing activities or planting activities, where you go 300 cars and then you have planted trees. People, you left them without even telling them the importance of this. They go plucking the same trees that you planted, because their business comes when the trees are being replanted.
Right.
So it's a serious discussion. It's not a joke. And we must come to the table together. Kenya Forest Service, National Environmental National Management. How can we all come together for common good of protecting the 80% of the people who are living around ecosystems? Not to reduce. Elbagon people can be given an opportunity, and we can even identify, because the so-called regulations for harvesting, there is a part E, part D, and part E that nobody talks about. There is even a bigger discretion to the director, that he can choose where to do the harvesting and the logging from. How do you do that without the Mwananchi being part of it? Those are the things that we are talking about, and we need to go with them in a very sober manner. The more we say that there is no logging, the more you find timber is being exported. The more you find perfumes are being created. Factories are being fed by Kenyan suppliers, where the code for export is being changed. You go, you wonder, where was this sent to? These are trees that are high value. Where is our ebony tree today? Where are all these kind of trees? And you wonder. But you find that it is in management, it is in protection, it is in balancing the rivers and the jobs. So there is nothing wrong with the statement. It is just an issue. You have opened the shop.
In terms
Who
of
is your
managing
supplier?
it.
Yeah.
So, but I hear you that. So, did we politicize essentially what is necessarily, it needs to be seen then as a livelihood conversation? Number one is that I can see the sense in telling people, okay, well, we closed the thing down before, so you couldn't go in and, log. Based on what you're saying, people need to pay school fees. You'll find that they find money in the times when trees are being felled. They can get, money from that. But I can also see the sense in telling people, okay, fine, you can go back and start to log. But that we would often think that information is then the data that we use to make a decision about certain things. When they said that we're going to plant 15 billion trees over the next, 10 years or whatever the case may be, it would seem as though it was a solution to the environmental challenges that Kenya has. Do we see it as more than that? Or is it just that? And is it sustainable as that idea? When everybody, and I mean, look at what happens on Mazingira Day. Everybody gets out and I think they're doing their patriotic duty to plant a tree. But is it sustainable in terms of what Kenya needs for sustainability, for livelihood, for cover, as you say?
Do you know the 15 billion trees is the easiest to achieve? It is the easiest of all things to achieve in this nation. Easiest. And I have written on my articles umpteenth times. I have written it in my book on how it can be done. And it is about getting the people to be part of the story. Growing trees and increasing forest cover could be one of the biggest income earners to families, even the people of Elbagon, as they were being talked to. Because you can easily engage the people to simply forest, to simply age out, to simply fence areas, and trees will regenerate. And pay them. Pay them for doing that. They will do that. I have said it slightly, and I say it out of experience. Go to Mount Kenya. Money is earned by the local people when they are replacing trees. That is why they have a program that is called Shtua program. It is never written anywhere, but you plant your trees. Once they grow, after about 6-7 months, they come and pluck it out. The roots are broken, pin it back so that they are allowed to continue doing their vegetables, doing their plantations of the shamba system in that area, because when the trees grow, they will never have something.
Sounds like that's what should be taught at empowerment programs.
Yes, this is what
Instead
I'm
of this
saying,
other
that
thing,
it is a communication issue. And we should really depoliticize matters of environment in this country, because this is a national security issue. Yeah, so you find people pluck so that the Kenya Forest Service and the government and anyone else, corporates, can come and pay the community to replant, to buy seedlings, to replant in those areas. Go to Masai. I'll give you another example. I've said it umpteen times. It's still happening. You call people in Narok. They are very good people. They carry salt in their pocket, uncouth people. And immediately you plant the tree seedling, they put the salt inside.
To kill it.
To kill it.
Why?
Because the next job is going to come when they are replanting trees.
And isn't that where the problem is? Because
That is the problem.
because once you introduce the concept of incentivizing,
Yes.
when you are planting a tree, because I remember when I was in like primary school going to high school, during the presidency of Daniel Moi. I remember we used to listen to radio programs back then. This was in the late 90s. We'd listen to radio programs, and in these programs, they were all about the environment, conservation. We watched videos countless times on KBC, and the president will be seen building gabions, building trees. We started growing up, we started planting trees when we were in primary school. And at the time, there was no idea that, please, it's almost like begging you, please go plant, we're going to give you some money. But today, We're talking about the same concept. The environment is not changed. The concept has not changed. Science has not changed. But you're telling somebody, please plant a tree. We're going to then pay you. Isn't that where the problem is? And I'm going to attach that to my next question, where, because I've seen disputes, the Karura forest, it's been in the news for the longest time, where we're looking at the Karura question represents a very fundamental issue, where who then is controlling natural resources around us? There is a community-led conservation group that will say, okay, we're going to take care of this. We don't need to be incentivized. We're going to do this because we understand what this means to us. But then you have then again a government that then can decide to recentralize power back to, we are the ones who will make the decision on what we want to do here. So there's been that tiff. And now you are talking about what is happening in Narok, where people are putting salt to kill a tree because they're going to get money to plant. Is there a fundamental issue that we're dealing with here?
It's a very deep issue. And why I choose to talk about it here, because like the salt, just like the issue of the unplugging the tree, this is like underworld business. It's black market. It's never been documented. I have been able to say this, and I say it with firmness, because I deal with people who come to tell me, Kalua, we will only be paid when we are going to replant. We even send our own individual to go and talk to keep our Kenya Forest Service officer busy, so that he can remain on the upper side of the forest, because how do you have two people taking care of a 10,000 acre forest? So they will send somebody to get there and stay with them as they deal with the business they are dealing downstream. We have had situations where people are confessing what they did. I mean, you ask yourself, they know, how is it possible that a CFS, Community Forest Management Service institution, is at loggerheads with Kenya Forest Service itself, who have given them that authority? The money that is in this country by institutions of corporate nature, I have kept saying, how do you go declaring profits when you have not served the community that has given you the water to run the projects that you're doing, without dealing with the issues of pollution that you are dealing with? And you are here flashing very good and glossy profits and reports, annual or quarter profits, when you have not done that. The corporate doesn't even know where to plug themselves into, because there is confusion. CFS are fighting with KFS. KFS is fighting with NEMA. NEMA, because they are establishing a dam inside a forest because a politician passed by and said that this is where the dam should be. No environmental management, nothing has been done. Then on the other side, Kenya Water Towers has now been abolished. You also find now there are multiple myriads of non-government organizations that have been given funding on all this. You find that there are business people who are now getting a lot of money, billions, out of carbon credits. Ask yourself, why is there no order in this space where 80% of Kenyans are looking forward to stay around?
For the people who lead, is there no understanding of what this can actually do economically and sustainably for the country?
It's a deliberate confusion that has been created so that there remains a loophole in this space.
To steal?
To steal for corruption purposes, and even the institutions themselves don't even realize it. By the time they realize, they're told that you use this class E, use this class D, you also have authority, we are building a school, let us get money to build that school, instead of using this money to do that. Forests miti zinakatwa.
I mean,
you get other opportunities that are just being opened so that corruption is happening. It has not just happened in this government. It has happened in many other governments previously. I have served in many other areas and also in governments that we have been able to work with. And you find the story is the same. It has reached a time that we must be able to do what we must do. Forget about the issue of votes. Forget about, because you are giving people more by ensuring. I said the other day, I tweeted and say that Kenya doesn't need more hospitals at the moment. What it needs are healthy ecosystems, because you will have people. We participated in an event just recently where we were graduating girls who have been trained on doing the environmentally friendly cook stoves and also on installing solar. And there was confession by women in a community saying that since we started doing this, we are going lesser to the hospitals because this has since been sorted. We don't have the issues that we used to have with our throats and all these respiratory issues. That is the direction that we need to be able. The discussion should not be even on SHA. We are talking about corruption in SHA. We are talking that SHA money. We should be dealing with things before we get to SHA. Because SHA will only deal with the symptoms and things that are happening, but the environment will be able to deal with much more. I know it sounds like cliche. I know it sounds unreasonable. But if we woke up every institution, every corporate institution to deal with these issues, that's money in the pocket of our people.
I mean, have we approached matters to do with environmental conservation, protecting trees, in a bad way? What do I mean? You remember the Mau forest matter and how the indigenous communities, the Ogiek, if you just read the word Ogiek, they're the protectors of flora and fauna, you know? And these are individuals who say, you are getting rid of us from a forest that we have protected over the years. It does exist because of us. Get rid of them, then you start hearing reports of logging happening in these forests because we've taken the indigenous communities out of it. How important is it that we approach this entire conversation from a participatory point where everyone is brought on board, hear what the Ogieks have to say on how we can protect this environment, on how we can thin these trees and use it as firewood, because that is what they have been doing and we can see the results in terms of Mau being protected. Extrapolate that information to other areas and copy from good practices, other than politicizing this to get mileage or politicize this because it is a global issue that looks sweet and there is money involved.
Let me bring it to this point, first of all. The biggest sufferer ahead of any elections since independence has been the forests. Silent. Just before the forests, before the elections, licenses are issued left, right, and center. Mills for harvesting and for creating timber, they come up in a way that you have never seen. This is not now, it has been happening all the years. I remember, and why I am also passionate about the issue of Shimba Hills. I was there, a minister in charge of forestry then, saying that they have now to come to harvest the trees that had been planted by KFS. And KFS is here crying in my presence, saying that this, KWS, saying that this has since become a habitat. The fact that now it is a gazetted national wildlife space does not protect that space. Why is it that people find that it is easy to make money with all? We all have issues and we must get a sustainable approach to do all these things. And I thank God for the president and the government for honoring me the other day as a national hero. For due to the Plant Your Age campaign. We need to educate our people so that they own the process. And they drive it for themselves. Ownership is what has been lacking. Plant your age. Imagine when we started it, the first one was actually planted by President Ruto. Then he was a minister, and together with other friends of his and ministers, they planted 71 trees for Wangari. It went like wildfire in the Hamatan, and soon there were 15 million trees planted within less than a year. Then it grew to the Plant Your Age campaign. If we educated our people. Simple. You're 35 years of age. Plant. Ensure that they grow. And you're paid because there is a value for that. Where is that money going to come? Easy. By the way, this world has got so much money for the green space. So much, you won't believe it. And I'm going to demonstrate it very soon with the Green Africa villages. So much money meant for that. No politics, to ensure that this country grows in the best way possible.
Literally
if
grows.
People manage this, you can imagine even the projects that have been announced that they are going to happen very big. Just because of mismanagement, the international community, the American government, all these other people, they withdraw them because there is lack of seriousness. UN is here. And you can imagine, as the leader and the global center for all this, let us drive this process passionately, not demeaning any life, and ensuring that people understand education in school. If you only pick that project of planting trees equivalent to your age, that you can be able to know where they are. Go to places that you have planted trees. People don't even know how to plant a tree successfully.
True.
I have done it on video for people to understand. Everywhere I go to plant trees and grow trees, I find that I did not tell these people. It needs to be a national campaign. And I like the media for the way that they have been taking this. Corporate institutions need to drive the message so that they can attach. If you're a bank and you have 5 million customers, get to plant trees equivalent to their age. You plant some, they plant some. It's a community space. I like what KFS was doing the other day, that they have 100 acres or 500 acres, whatever number, and therefore they are calling corporates to come and do that. That can be done very sustainably, and there is money globally, a lot of money that is unbelievable, that can be used if we are serious and if community is linked to this. The problem is that the money gets lost in between.
Yes.
You think that it's going to reach the people, yet it is lining up pockets for a few people. Yet there is enough for everyone that we can be able to have.
My goodness, there is. And this is not just by the way roadside conversation. It's an intellectual one. It's a sustainable one. It's lifeline for people, for Kenya. Dr. Isaac Kalua Green, thank you for joining us this morning.
My time is gone.
Imagine.
Okay.
But like we said, it's a sustainable conversation, so it cannot be a flash in the pan conversation. It's one that must continue. If education is going to continue, it cannot be one conversation. That's why we do what we do. Thank you for joining us to be able to do that this morning.
Keep up the good work.
Asante sana, sir.
Even if you're listening to yourself. God is seeing. You're the best.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for keeping it part of Kenya's biggest conversation this Wednesday. Enjoy the rest of your listening, and we'll talk again soon.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.